Aloha everyone, this is Arado and we're here to talk about counter units. What makes a good counter unit and what value do you get for bringing a counter unit into a hard content scenario? Recently we've been having a lot of characters released that are designed for counter duty, like Saga Forneus, Global First Bertrand, Global First Urpina, and then there are also some characters who has the skill to be able to act like a counter character, like Beach Khalid and UDX Galahad accordingly. So how do you distinguish them and how would you know which is the best one to bring to a hard content scenario? So we'll take a look at that in this video. First off, I want to give two quick shout outs. One to Sato-san with the Rouge artwork we have on display. Her Twitter handle is Ultima Patria. When you have the chance, please visit Sato-san's page for more of her artwork. The other shout out is for Sinzar from the FFB community. I'm inspired by how he makes his thumbnails very funny with the characters when the little dialogues that I wanted to do the same for our Romancing Saga, and so that's what I used in today's video. Hopefully that's a start with, some good dialogues happening with whatever topic we're gonna have for the video. Alright, let's move on to the topic with a good counter unit. So personally for me, a good counter unit should have self-sustained defenses and healing. So recently we've been having a lot of changes with the action switches, with UDX Galahad, Bertrand, and also Beach Khalid as the most recent one, where if they perform specific element attacks that they would get either attack boost, defense boost, extra small healing, or BP recovery. And so those are good traits to have because, as you know, attack boost and defense boost would stack with one another, and it would stack with the passive defenses or offense that your character has, and so on. So Bertrand, Galahad, and Khalid kind of have a step up in this party because Urpina, while she doesn't have those attack boosts and defense boosts, she has her passive defenses with her. I believe it's at 35 if not 40% defenses if I'm not mistaken, and so that's the only defenses that she's gonna work with. Other than that, she has extra small healing but as a separate skill compared to say Bertrand and Khalid and Galahad, where they would have healing as they do their counters accordingly. For Saga Forneus, it's a little different because Saga Forneus would negate indirect attacks. So when he goes in counter stance with skill number 2, he also gets 0 damage for indirect attacks. So earlier when you saw the enemy Galahad doing Cold Wind, that's considered as an indirect attack, and so Forneus would take 0 damage out of it. So the other thing that I feel is a good value for a counter unit is either the stance is a dodge counter or it's a 100% uptime counter that they don't have to keep on casting that every so often. For example, for Bertrand, whenever he gets a direct attack, he would always counter with Twin Goldfish. So that's a good thing because he can perform other stuff like unfortunately Bertrand doesn't have much buffing to the party, and so he can just keep on casting extra Twin Goldfish so that he can have extra attack and defense boost to himself. For Galahad, he has to keep on casting Freezing Spikes, which lasts for 4 turns. The upside to that is being able to negate cold damage, and then also he has some extra turns where he can use his skill number 1 and hopefully gain BP plus 10 out of it, or use skill number 3 for extra attack boost so that he can counter better. For Khalid, unfortunately, he has to keep on using his dodge counter stance, and so that kind of makes him stuck with that. Good thing about his counter is it does a strength debuff, so if your enemy does a lot of strength related attacks, that he would be able to help with that accordingly. As you know, when I did the showcase with Khalid with Tatiana and Narwhal's daughter, that Khalid was able to help with the strength debuffing with Tatiana accordingly. For Orpina, I included her on the list because she is still a little unique in a way that whenever she hits the enemy weak point, that she does a defense down to the enemy, and so that allows your party overall to have overall better DPS. For Forneus, it's the same thing. Whenever he counters direct attacks, he would debuff the enemy with endurance, and again, it would help the overall DPS for the party, which is more leaning towards the physical side. And then other than the counter, of course, if there are any extra passive or support that they can have the party benefit out of. So I think in global that is not applicable at this time because we are still not at the point where they try to squeeze in as much capability as they can to a party member. So for example, now that we are showing the JP side of the video, I have Wagnas who can do self-burning or self-immolation, so he can negate fire attacks and also be able to counter with self-immolation accordingly. On top of that, he gives extra small heal to everyone when they do overdrive attack, and also give overdrive gauge whenever during end of turn to a random party member. For Goddess, she has her counter stance for 2 turns, so she would be able to counter with Masamune Fury, and then also when as needed, she can do the AoE healing with the Goddess Heart. For Iberis right here, Iberis has a 100% uptime counter, but he also doesn't have any passive that would benefit the party other than the first skill I use, which gives a heat down to the enemy. But because I'm fighting Egg, that I think it gets wiped out when Egg changes form. So he just has 100% uptime and he can keep on giving defenses to himself. For Final Emperor, I believe he also doesn't have extra stuff that he can give the party to, and so he's more into just doing counter and being able to have high aggressive buff to himself, because whenever he does skill number 1, it gives a taunt stance to himself. And of course, School Bertrand, which I am very hyped for global. He has intrinsic just like Khalid, so that's a good thing. School Bertrand has a 100% uptime counter, even though it's not at a 100% chance, just like Global First Bertrand or Iberis right here. It's at a 50% chance, which is decent enough for me. And then also, whenever he does specific element attacks that he gets certain stuff out of it, attack boost, defense boost, healing, BP +1, and all attribute buff. And that's why I was mentioning during my Global First Bertrand rundown video that School Bertrand would be able to benefit with the twin goldfish accordingly, because it would give him extra attack and defense boost. And as you know, as we get further into the game, that the hard content enemies would be cleansing your buffs, that you would rather have attack and defense boost with you, so that whoever is your tank would not die easily. In my case, it's School Bertrand and JP. But there are also other good counter characters that are designed just for counter. So take for example Saga Soul Romancing Saga 1 minstrel song Monica, that whenever she gets direct attack, she gets a buff to herself and she gets to counter with Cunning Lunge plus and Final Letter. So it's a 2 skill. So the more direct attack she gets for the turn, the more counter she does. And so if there is a direct attack type of battle, just like Domafa for example, or the latest Remembrance battle with Lion Princess, that Monica would be able to shine accordingly. And same goes for pre 4.5 year Julian, where he would counter with Star Rush plus and be able to give buffs to the party as well, as he does counter, which is pretty good and pretty useful for self-sustain and stuff. Other than that, I also want to note that if you choose for Khalid to be a counter unit, especially if you have the first SS style, the Romancing Fest one, the one with the white outfit, that style has the Tempest Moon skill, so it would get an amplification in the future. It was first seen in 4.5 year in JP when they released 4.5 year Madeline, where she had the Tempest Moon Plus. So what it does is, rather than putting Khalid in a defensive counter, it would put Khalid in a dodge counter instead, and also would counter with Demilune Echo. And then Saga Forneus would have another style by the finale of Liam chapter, where he has an extra counter stance when he does overdrive, and he also gets self overdrive gauge every turn ends. And so with skill number 2 from the Saga style, that he would be able to have 2 counters with him, and also be able to negate indirect damage, even though the skill number 2 from the Saga style is just 1 turn. I believe that it would still be helpful, especially if you think about enemies like Spiral 190, for example, with Basil Grayos, that he just throws everything at you, that it's really hard to survive the attacks. But some of them are indirect attacks that Forneus might be able to negate with proper timing and be able to counter accordingly. So those are just some scenarios that you can use Forneus accordingly for with the Finale style, along with skill number 2 from the Saga style. And like I already mentioned about School Bertrand and Twin Goldfish with the extra attack boost and defense boost. Ultimately, for a counter unit, it's mainly to help direct to have the aggressiveness of the enemy to go to your tank, and also be able to counter accordingly. Because as we progress through the game, the enemy HP would become so much higher, and also you would want to have as much capability as you can, whether it be buffing, DPS, and so on. And that extra damage that you do as you do counter is very helpful. And hopefully the next counter styles that we get in Global would act somewhat like a 4.5 year Julian Light, in a way that whenever they do counter, that the party would benefit from it, that with whatever buff or healing or what have you, because that would be something where it's kind of guarantees you in a spot where you don't need some counter units for a while we wait for the better ones to show up, right? Because there's always going to be a better one. Let's make it clear. But settling in with a counter unit with the recent ones we have, I would say Global First Bertrand is a really good one to have, especially the banner being high value in my opinion. And I think other people like Sher or Siegfried from Discord, that they would agree that the banner is high value because of Melissa and Witch's Daughter in it as well. That being able to pull Bertrand and having the chance to pull for other high value characters is a good thing. For Beach Khalid, it's a little iffy for me to suggest for you to pull, because although there is Narwhal's Daughter in there, and Narwhal's Daughter also has the action switch with the defense boost, attack boost, and BP +2 healing, what have you, that her role is a little repetitive, that other characters may be able to mimic what she can do. And so if anything, Khalid would be the most unique one in there, with the action switch and being able to act as a counter if you choose him to. But he's more into a single target farmer / row / column farmer, depending on what you use for him. But definitely in the future, now that we are in the JP side of the video again, I would highly recommend School Bertrand and School Wagnas accordingly. I think they're on the same banner with Nurse Bune, so it's pretty high value if you are hyped for all those characters. Just an overview, Nurse Bune is really good in healing. She can do roughly 400-ish extra small heal by herself, and then some extra stuff that she can do. If you think about Summer Bune we had for global, where on overdrive that she can do extra attack down, I think, and defense down accordingly depending on the skill. So that's a plus to have. Like I said, School Wagnas gives extra capability to the party, and so that's why I'm very hyped for that. And School Bertrand with Twin Goldfish, if you have GL first Bertrand, that would be good as well. If not, it's gonna be fine. All right, hopefully I'm able to help you see what a counter unit looks like, what they do, and what is a good counter unit, to be specific. So yeah, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And again, thank you Sato-san and Sinzar for whatever I use in today's video. And see you in the next video or stream, everyone. Peace and love.